The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
You got a Sunday meeting, they said. The place has a patio, they said. That'll be a great place to meet. And if you're watching on YouTube, my face is beet red because I got a little too much sun yesterday. We've got a lot to get to on the program, including who is more desperate, Texas A&M or is it Alabama? All kinds of shaking and good times on the basketball front, as you might expect. And Tennessee with some recruiting, not only news, but I'm going to be able to give you a little bit of insight as to where things are going. So we're off and running, and I'll quote my man D on the message board already. Go ahead and smash that like button. Subscribe while you're at it. It really helps us out and helps to bring more viewers. Cost you nothing, not a zippo, absolutely zero. But maybe you don't need me. I'm looking at the analytics from Friday. My son was graduating, and Caleb just slayed it. So I don't know. Maybe he'll just do it by himself. Do you want me to drop out of this thing and you just take over, Caleb?
Well, Dave, we had an advantage. I don't know if Fred told you, but we dove deep into what we expected from the Real Housewives of Atlanta season premiere last night. And
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but I'm
joking. Fred says he never watches the show and that they shouldn't be housewives because they're all not married usually anyway. But we went down the rabbit hole. We were like, you know what? Dave should produce a show, Real House Hookers of different cities. And
exactly right. I should sue them for trademark infringement. Okay, I have a cool announcement. So we talked a lot about the Celebrate 98 series. It is, and I've told you all along, thanks to Tennessee Cider Company, it's going to be a real thing, and it is. We taped our first show on Friday, so that's going to drop later today. It was Eric Westmoreland, and it'll be me and Fred White week to week. Got at least Dwayne Goodrich coming up this week, and more and more and more. So just a lot going on. Click the like button if you haven't subscribed and turn your notifications on. Whether or not you are on YouTube, whatever podcast platform you're on, turn the notifications on because those are going to drop sporadically. For the most part, they'll drop on a Sunday night or beginning of the week, but they'll be 2 and 3 and 4 sometime, some weeks. And so we want you to go ahead and do that. So I did wear my sunglasses, so I look like a pink raccoon. If you haven't gotten on our YouTube channel, please do that. And we love it. So a lot to get to. As I mentioned, I can't believe A&M took a quarterback, but it's not as big of a deal, I don't think, as Alabama taking a quarterback. And then, listen, I'm going to be real honest with you. We're going to start working with a gambling website, and it's going to be later this month. And I'm kind of glad it's not DraftKings because I think DraftKings throws Tennessee some shade from time to time. Do you remember last year they were just an 8.5 over under for the season? I thought was one of the easiest bets in the entire SEC as far as over under. I had Auburn, I believe, was 6.5. I wanted the under, and Alabama was 10.5, and I like the over. So, but we're going to get to that by DraftKings, but we're going to announce a major partnership with a gambling website that we're really excited about. And it's kind of neat because we've got a lot of bets that we can do, like prop bets. Like we could say Joe Milton's going to throw for more yards this year than Spencer Rattler. There's all kinds of fun stuff that we're going to be adding to the table. But the Celebrate 98 series has gone through production and is the first installment is done. And we will drop that later this afternoon. So if you haven't set your notifications on, then that means you don't want to celebrate the 98 team and you don't want to hear from every superstar that was on that team. So But get the notifications on, please. Just take 1 second, one Mississippi. Do that for me, whether it's YouTube, download the app, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, I don't care. But I want you to enjoy this summer. This is a passion project for me. Am I a guy that's about making money at the end of the day for my family? Yes, my son's going to an expensive college. But would I do this for absolute free? The Celebrate 98 series, I absolutely would. So I'm very, very excited. I feel weird asking this. So don't, Caleb, don't tell me how I did, but you watched the whole thing. It's an hour, okay? So it's long. It's something you want to come home and watch because there's not good sports now, which overpaid NBA players. And I think you'll want to watch it. Hopefully it'll hit like Jordan hit COVID in his series. But you had a chance to watch it. I just want to get your thoughts, not about me, but about some of the sharing that Eric Westmoreland and Fred White did in looking back on that 98 season and how one of those gentlemen, without giving anything away, was homeless and the other helped them out. I'm just curious what you thought. Did you learn things from watching that, Caleb?
Yeah, it stood out to me, and I do believe I always kind of gathered this about the 98 team, but it really didn't hit until watching it. And you guys will see it when you see the interview, but the closeness of that team was unparalleled. It reminds me of there aren't, and I feel like that's common, Dave, with a lot of championship teams that don't have a superstar that drives them to a championship. I think of like the late 80s. The only thing I could say compares to the 98 team would be the late 80s Detroit Pistons that of teams that I know were extremely close, where they all had a deep bond. And I feel like you guys will get that with watching the 98 series.
Wow, that is a very flattering comparison. I mean, that you took that away from that means a lot, man. I appreciate you saying that. All right, so a lot to get to on the program. I actually got emotional. One of us, I'm not going to say who, but one of us did get teary. It wasn't me, but one of us got a little teary-eyed. So I'm excited. I'm excited, and I hope you enjoy it throughout the summer. So, and D says it'll be great to listen to Rolling Through Texas or the Mojave. D, by the way, is a trucker, so he's all over the place. And D, at some point I need your help because I know a lot of companies are looking for truck drivers and I can help them find it. So at some point shoot me your email. I'm Dave at offthehooksports.com because we're looking for a trucking company actually to partner with. Am I trying to get advertisers during the show? Maybe a little bit. All right, but we got to keep this thing rolling, so let's do it. Tennessee Cider Company, by the way, I'll tell you more about them as we go on and people talk about moonshine. Here's the bottom line. I've done a live show and somebody said, hey, do you care to drink our product? I did a live show from a moonshine distillery in Gatlinburg. It tasted like rubbing alcohol, and I took a shot of it on the air, and I thought I was about to die. These Tennessee ciders from Tennessee Cider Company, wowzers. They are incredible. If if you got a young lady and you're like, hey, maybe she needs my wife needs a couple of pops, sometimes on a Friday night, but she doesn't like the taste of liquor. Well, Tennessee Cider Company. And you can order online. I'll tell you more about that as the week goes on. We have a ton going on, and we're excited about it. So let's go ahead and start right here and now with Tennessee Cruton. And that's always important. So you're going to find, especially over the next coming weeks, it's going to start our show off a lot because recruiting used to be a December sport. It's now a May and June sport, and it's a really, really big deal. Kellen Lindstrom from Glendale, 4-star prospect, Glendale, Missouri, has committed to Tennessee. Now, a little bit of a discrepancy as far as how big of a commitment this is. 247 Sports has him as a 3-star. The 24/7 composite has him as a 4-star. The number 27 defensive lineman in the nation, number 228 overall prospect in the nation, and number 7 prospect in Missouri. So if you think to yourself that doesn't jive exactly, because 4-stars typically would be maybe a little bit higher than some of those numbers, well, a lot of these guys haven't been completely rated, but they pick him up. He goes into the class of 2024. So let's dive into this one. And I'm going to tell you some things I heard about Tennessee football recruiting that I can't share all of it with you, but I'm going to share some things about the state of Tennessee football recruiting and where they are. Because at the end of the day, the rankings and all of that are very political. And I'm going to be the one person that's going to tell you why. A lot of people don't get into that. I'm kind of unique in this position because I covered recruiting so closely. And I don't care to tell you the truth because I don't run a recruiting website. But I will tell you this. Kellen Lenderson, I think, is a very significant pickup. So according to 247 Sports, he did have offers from Alabama. He did have offers from Arkansas, did have offers from Auburn and California. I hate the term committable offers. Can't speak really if they're committable offers, but I don't think there's any question this is a high 3 to 4 star guy that Tennessee would take no matter how great recruiting is going. According to Alan Trieu, play speed and ability to disrupt play stands out immediately, has the frame to grow into a lot of directions, and could project to almost any spot along the defensive line. He ain't going to be a tackle, I don't think, at 6'5", 235 pounds. I think he's going to be an end that's going to be about 250 pounds. Talk to somebody about him over the weekend. Big pickup. Let's play my game. This is an anywhere, somewhere, or nowhere guy. That's our ranking. This is an anywhere guy, okay? So anywhere means that you could go to any school you wanted to. Somewhere means, there's only a few Power 5 schools that like you. And nowhere means head on down to Division II. I'm going to go ahead and dub this an anywhere guy with the Alabama offer in tow. What do you think, Caleb Calhoun, of Mr. Lindstrom?
Yeah, this is an anywhere guy. This is definitely an anywhere guy. I think that now whether or not he starts anywhere is a different story. I think the only thing that held him back, Dave, quite honestly, with his ranking, I think he would have been in the mid 4-star range. I think people are just a little nervous about his level of competition in high school, which that there is a lot of that's weighted a lot with a lot of these rankings. And I understand that we've talked about in the past, there have been massive busts that looked like 5 stars because they were playing against weak competition. A lot of times they were in-state Tennessee guys playing in a rural Tennessee county with no competition. And so I think there's a concern about that. But you're talking about a guy that ranges 235 to 245, perfect for an edge rusher on one side. Can definitely get to the passer. Seems like he's got at least enough physical ability to be able to stop the run and you're right, he's not going to play tackle, but he could probably get in between the gaps to stop the run if he needed to. And so I think the versatility, that's a big part of what Tim Banks does, particularly on the line, particularly because he runs so many different blitz packages. And I think because of that, this is a pretty good pickup. And it also, more importantly, because we talk about pipelines, I know Missouri is not a great recruiting state, but there's some talent that comes out of there every year. A few guys that come out every year. And Josh Heupel is still showing he's got that pipeline into Missouri. And that's also why I don't think he's ever going to stop running up the score on Missouri when he plays them.
Oh, no, great point. I didn't think about that, but no, you're absolutely right. Okay, so I think he's a big pickup. Where does this take Tennessee? Because the reason I like 247, by the way, is you don't wait for recruiting updates. Theirs is all analytics based. So where does this get Tennessee in the recruiting rankings at this point in the season? Again, May 8th, this would mean nothing when I started covering recruiting in 2006, but it does mean something right now. The other thing that has changed in recruiting is I like the fact that a lot of these kids don't stick. You remember decommits were such a big thing back in the day. For some reason, they stick now, even early. I don't completely know why, but good, because coaches deserve that because they used to have
money, guys. That's why.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay, so that's why they stick. Paradigm shift in Dave's head just now. All right, so
recruiting's on the up and up, guys. There's no shadiness at all in recruiting when players commit. They're not talking to endorsements at all.
Right. Okay, so what do you got on Tennessee's ranking right now, which should be solid in the top 10, and where in the SEC? Because suddenly South Carolina has become one to worry about a little bit.
Yes, this is still a concern. Tennessee is number 9 right now in team recruiting rankings on 247 Sports Composite. Now, Michigan and Ohio State are number 1 and 2. And guys, I've talked about this. We talked about the Big Ten TV deal that's coming in. We'll talk about another conference later in the show. there's a reason the Big Ten is starting to clean up on the recruiting show with the top schools, and it is something that the SEC is going to have to address. But Georgia's number 3, Notre Dame's number 4, LSU's number 5, Penn State's number 6, Florida State's number 7, South Carolina's number 8, and Tennessee's number 9. So you're looking at Georgia and LSU and South Carolina are ahead of Tennessee right now. Florida's just behind them at number 11. Guys, I want to say this up front. Don't get excited about Tennessee being ahead of Alabama. If you've covered recruiting, you know that the minute July comes, everybody asks what's going on with Alabama recruiting in May. Everybody always asks that question. And then by the time July comes, they've got the number 1 class. So there is no issue with Alabama recruiting right now. I can guarantee you that.
Agreed. Perfect lead in, Caleb. So here we go. So I was talking to somebody well-placed within the program last week. So I'm going to give you a little bit of insight, and you need to file this away, because the next evolution of Tennessee recruiting are these type of guys. Being able to get a guy that Alabama wants, that Georgia wants. And I've said that before, but I'm going to bring some more information to the table right now. So based off the source I talked to, is there are a couple of guys. This is not the end of the world because of the transfer portal. There are a couple of guys that have been brought in that are a little bit incomplete, okay, that are either not as physically gifted as some of the guys that you need, or maybe aren't as great as functional football players that you would like. I think Justin Williams-Thomas is a great example. Justin Williams-Thomas came to Tennessee. He looked like Eric Dickerson was on steroids. I mean, he looked absolutely unbelievable. Couldn't find a hole, was not a functional football player. Boom, you're out in January. So this would be like a major red flag if you're bringing in handfuls of guys that aren't ready to play by year 2 at the collegiate level. It's not as big of a deal now because you're just going to boost these guys out. In January, they get paid. I don't rip coaches anymore, Tennessee or otherwise, for doing that because it's a business now. But what Tennessee needs to do more and more is win guys like these, okay? They need to win functional football players. There's one player in particular, I'm not going to name the player, that has all kinds of physical ability, but he's not a functional football player yet. He didn't have a lot of tackles last year, but he's maybe one of the next best athletes on the team. Darnell Wright was the best athlete on the team. He was a functional football player. So they need more of those, I was told. Again, not a concern. I would be telling you right now, if this were 5 years ago before NIL and transfer portal, that, you backed yourself into a corner with some questionable players that need to be ready next year. Not 2023, but 2024. They're fine this year. But you're going to be able to jettison these guys out. The evolution is you keep going to boosters right now to say, hey, I need a Dante Thornton. I need a Keenan Pili. And I've been told by people not associated with Tennessee's program, it is clearly just a bidding war now. You go to Miami, you say, hey, Miami, what do you give me? They say $300,000. You go to Alabama, they say, we got you slotted at $400,000. I'm making up numbers. I don't know the numbers. And then you go to a Tennessee, and if Tennessee wins, then they get that guy. So that's all good. That's cool. But at some point, you're adding a lot to the budget, Caleb. I mean, the Tennessee's athletic department budget, I believe, is about $125 million. You don't want to add an extra $5-10 million in NIL money to that your boosters have to pay out, unless you're winning back-to-back championships, and then they'll be fine with it. So this is the type of guy that they need. That being said, there are some guys on campus that are going to get jettisoned. Okay, that's going to happen. Some guys that you probably even liked in recruiting. And I know I'm being a little bit unclear. I'm not sharing everything here, but there are winners too. There are guys that have showed up that are absolute winners that Tennessee has recruited. The two most prime examples are easy. Dylan Sampson, Squirrel White, right? I mean, those guys are going to have big time years. There's some other guys we talked about that I don't know if they'll play extensively at Tennessee, but that's fine since you have the transfer portal. But this type of guy, I really like. Alabama was in on him. I looked at his tape. I'm good on him. And I think Tennessee should celebrate this one. But that's kind of the state of Tennessee football recruiting. So they are not there yet. I'm going to be real honest with you. I don't get paid anything by UT. I don't have any sort of partnership with UT like some other media companies do. That's where Tennessee is. Okay. And this is the type of guy that would signal a bit of a change in direction and winning some of the Alabama and Georgia recruiting battles. Caleb, the ultimate is when Tennessee, and I don't want to harp on 98 like I'm some old man, but the other one, Caleb, that the real class, the thing that changed everything was the Georgia trio. It was Cozy Coleman, it was Deion Grant, and it was Jamal Lewis. When they beat those guys for Georgia, that changed everything. So either this guy or 2 or 3 guys down the road, probably not this guy from Missouri, to be real honest with you, but at some point soon, you're going to see a little flourish, I believe. And Tennessee's recruiting will be able to not necessarily rely on transfers as much, which is NIL cash, and they're going to be able to step up and battle those teams. That's the next step, okay? And I think they'll get there. They're not there yet, okay, based off the source I talked to, Caleb. So I wanted to share that with our audience because I believe you learn more on this show, as much on this show as anywhere else. So you and I talked about it over the weekend, so you probably got some thoughts, but that's kind of where we are and what we can share publicly. What do you think, Caleb?
Yeah, so it's funny when you brought this up. I've always criticized NFL teams for going on potential because they go on raw athletic potential more than I think you and I are both. If you were an NFL GM, your biggest thing would be plugging the tape, right? More than anything else, plugging the tape when you were drafting.
Mm-hmm. And that was part of our discussion too. That Tennessee is drafting guys on potential. Think Joe Milton, who I'm sorry to interrupt, who Heupel got. He can throw it 80 yards, but what if the receiver's at 64 yards? Think Ethan Davis, who I think is going to be a great player, incredibly athletic, but not a refined tight end at all. Okay, so go ahead, Caleb. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, the reason I was bringing that up is with college recruiting to high school, is it the same or don't you have to rely a little more on potential because you can't really judge because it's so spread out and the competition and the levels of competition are so different from school to school, county to county, state to state that don't you have to rely even more on potential than plugging in the tape when you're recruiting high school talent?
Great point. You can't take Bobby Bocephus down the road at Powell High School. I say Powell because that's where I went. I got my PhD, Powell High diploma. You can't take Bobby just because he's 5'9" and ran for 2,500 yards and threw for 4,000 yards. You have to have some potential. I mean, there are a lot of productive guys. And the one that stands out the most that Tennessee debated on and lost out on was Randall Cobb at Alcoa. A lot of the Tennessee's coaches were, they weren't really split. They were all against him, except for Trooper Taylor at the time. And Troop wanted him, no question. They tried to get in on him. It was too late. Then Coop took to the job to Oklahoma State, and then you're not going to get him at that point. So that's a great example of they were split. They didn't think he had enough upside, even though he was very productive. It's a great example. I don't know if you got any more off the top of your head.
Oh no, I mean, it's funny because you're right, and this is just to detail how hard this is. From the reverse, Chris Donald was a 5-star, very productive, a very productive high school football player. There were concerns about the level of competition he faced, but Tennessee took the chance.
Remind everyone who Chris Donald is because you're like an encyclopedia. So remind everybody who Chris Donald is. I want to remind everybody to hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you just got to do that. And we appreciate it. But the like button helps us bring more people in during the show. So even if you're watching one of the replay versions, we air live at 10 o'clock each and every weekday. So remind those who Chris Donald is.
Okay, so Chris Donald was a 5-star linebacker in the Eric Berry class. He helped push that class to number 2 in the country in 2007. He came out of Huntington High School in Huntington, Tennessee. All due respect to the people from Huntington, there's no way to measure a football player in Carroll County, Tennessee. There's just no way to know football talent. It's not Jackson, it's not Chattanooga, it's not Memphis, it's not Nashville, and it's not even Knoxville, for that matter.
Just like Patrick Willis, who Tennessee passed on. It was tough to judge him because of who he played. And then he went on the NFL Hall of Fame. But
yeah,
yes.
Exactly. It is really hard at the high school level because of these issues. Because Unlike what's happening with college football, where all the talent's about to get consolidated into the top with the SEC and the Big Ten taking over everything, it is still massively spread out with high school. And so you're right. You're going to have to draft a little more with raw talent. So Chris Donald was one of those guys he took a shot on, and it just didn't work out. It was, and again, the competition was a concern when he was was recruited. I mean, I think you and I may agree he may have been up to a 5-star because he was productive and Tennessee wanted him, and we know how politicking goes with rivals at the time. I will say this when it comes to potential. There's one thing I'll say, because you've talked about this a lot. There's a pretty good track record of player development with Josh Heupel, better than a lot of other coaches I've seen. And maybe he believes that he can go a little more with potential because he knows how to develop players and maximize what they can do. I mean, we saw this with Nick Saban. Maybe not even develop them, but just maximize what they can do. You talk about running backs that couldn't hit the hole. Trent Richardson was the worst of all time at not hitting the hole, and Nick Saban still found use for him. I mean, and he was the fact that whoever in Oakland decided to draft him should have been fired as a GM immediately because it was so obvious he was not an NFL running back.
Well, and in college, it's easier to hit the hole when there are 5 holes.
Alabama creates 5, yes.
Yes, I mean it's way easier, much easier to hit the hole.
Have you ever seen the picture of Richardson in Oakland where he like the hole's so wide on one side and he goes the other? It's the most infamous like missed hole of all time. We got to share the screen if you haven't.
We can do that on the way back, but I want to get to DraftKings and what they think about Tennessee. And they've got Tennessee at a very interesting number of the win-loss total. So I want to get to that. And Joe Milton is on the Heisman board. They think he has a shot. I'm a voter. I'll tell you whether or not that's the case. We're going to be back in a deuce, as in Fred White. 2 minutes. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
And Craving Wings South North Shore location, where we've heard people say that you can get the best wings in East Tennessee. Pero ¿quién es este? El número 87, Jacob Warren.
I'll just do 6 on my sauce 87, please.
Imposible, señorita. Dale 6 más. Look at these wings. Perfectas, deliciosas, fantásticas.
Man, I don't know what you're saying, but it sounds awesome. How do you say fresh, never frozen in Spanish?
Frescas, nunca congeladas. Make your way to Craving Wings and get you 6 más.
But what was funny about Cadis, we were a full continuum of care at that time. We had detox, we had inpatient, we had outpatient. So we were doing a lot of the things that we do now. But now we just do them so much better. It's really a simple program, but we're complicated people. I am what I am, and now I got to do something about it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Our family has been creating jewelry since 1986, each piece unique with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
A college football tradition like no other.
Yes, sirree, boys and girls.
Or a guy that just won't leave.
Wow, that is sad.
The Dave Hooker Show, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Back to Dave Hooker.
So some of these gambling numbers are out. I want to go ahead and tell you, well, you're a gambling guy. Do you believe in long-term prop bets?
Oh yeah, yeah. Some of those are the best. The only thing I don't believe in are parlays because those are the ones that just, they get 80% of their profits on from you, and they are so enticing and they're so hard to say no to.
The hardcore gambling guys tell me not to do long-term bets because it ties up your money. Somebody that won't tie up your money is Craft Treats. Go to crafttreats.com. I'll tell you more about that as we get to 4 downs. As Vegas has begun to weigh in some over-under numbers of what you can expect from the Vols. And I don't bet, especially don't do long-term prop bets, but I would have blown Vegas out of the water and what they thought about Tennessee last year. So here we go. 4 downs. And right now, brought to you by crafttreats.com.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, here we go. So let me throw this out there right now, and I'll tell you what I think of it. Why DraftKings is absolutely wrong. DraftKings set Tennessee's football team with a 9.5 over under in wins this season. The Vols at plus 2,800, which means if you bet 100, you get 2,800 for the national title. Those are the 12th best odds. So a lot of people seem to think Tennessee's in that 10 to 15 range, including Vegas. I don't agree, but we'll discuss why. Joe Milton III, Junior, Senior, Esquire, has the 10th best odds for the Heisman at plus 2,000. I'll tell you why that would be a bad bet, even though I love me some Joe Milton. Everybody's going to say that I don't like him now, but I do. But first, you got to go to crafttreats.com. Crafttreats.com. Just open up another tab and think about your pet. Your pet absolutely could use it, whether it has digestive issues, anxiety issues, or maybe arthritis. Man, my little boy Thaddeus loves it, and he's getting a little older, and I can tell arthritis is a thing, and I use the chill pills, crafttreats.com. Use the promo code off the hook, get 20% off with the chill pills with that CBD derivative that will help your pet. So here we go. 4 downs. I'm going to tell you if that Vegas DraftKings is right or wrong. By the way, for those that don't know, ESPN is not going to get toppled by Fox Sports. They're going to get toppled by Bally's and DraftKings Network. That's what's going to happen. Did you see where they bought? Did you see where they bought the Dan Le Batard show for $50 million?
Yeah, but ESPN has been smart. They partner with Caesars, so they got out ahead of this and set up shop in Vegas. The real issue is because I think Bally's is in trouble. Some of these sports books, they jumped into sports gambling so quickly because it was rising and didn't think about what happens when. So the thing you need to know about gambling, this is true with sports gambling too. When times get tough, whether it be inflation, a recession, anything like that, people gamble a heck of a lot less.
Yeah,
and so
and that's what we're doing now. And I think a lot of people are going to be loyal. But anyway, I was just noticing you're going to see a lot of these networks. And it's not that they will destroy ESPN, but then you splinter the audience. Yep. Here we go. 4 downs now, brought to you by crafttreats.com.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So this is from DraftKings.com. And win total 9.5. There is no in between. You got to pick it, and people want to take part in the message board. Do it now. Win total 9.5. First down. Heck yeah, no way.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Schedule's easier than it was last year. Heck yeah.
Heck yeah. I don't think this is difficult. I think it would be very difficult at 10.5. I don't think it would be that difficult at 10.5. But I think this is a heck yeah. I think this is again, second year in a row, one of, I think, the easier bets when it comes to preseason. We'll look at the entire SEC before it's all said and done. All right. Would you take the Vols at plus 2,800 to win the national title? Those are the 12th best odds in the nation. I think I just created a list. Heck yeah, no way.
Heck yeah, I'm not saying they're going to win the national title, but these odds are great. Look, Penn State has better odds at plus 2,500 than Tennessee. Texas has better odds at plus 2,500 than Tennessee. Notre Dame has better odds at plus 2,500 than Tennessee. Those are, if those can be at 2,500, I think Tennessee at 2,800 is a pretty good bet. And the worst of all of these, by the way, by far the worst, Florida State with the 7th best odds at plus 1,800. That's the stupidest odds ever.
Help me with that. I do not get that. I'm going to go no way. I'm not going to go. I think they lost their best player in Darnell Wright overall, and they have a quarterback issue. The defense is still not solidified, so I'm going to go no way. I don't think there's any way the Vols win the national title this year, so I would turn down the plus 2,800. If this were a playoff year, this would be one of the teams that I would jump on. Okay, there are like 2 or 3 that are in that periphery at the plus 2,500, which again means if you bet 100, you win 2,500. There are 2 or 3 that I would put there, and this would be one of them if there were a 12-team playoff. But there's not this year, so I think this would be asking a lot with what Tennessee has to replace. All right.
Aren't you working on this long-term project featuring a team that lost their quarterback and lost their best player, and then what did they happen to do the next year?
Yes. Celebrate 98. Yes, that's a good point. every once in a while. I love how, Caleb's like the hockey guy. Every once in a while he checks me against the boards, which I need. That's a great point. And at plus 2,800, it's not like it's even money. So yeah, I would think about it. All right. But I'm going to go no way for now because there's no middle ground. That was second down. Third down. Would you take Joe Milton plus 2,000? Heck yeah, no way to win the Heisman.
No, absolutely not. And those are tied for the 9th best Heisman odds. No, I would not.
I would go no way as well, but I'm going to play the other side. Hendon Hooker got in the mix and would have gone to New York as a finalist. So I think that behind the scenes, guys, they've called some Heisman voters that haven't been sending in their votes for a decade and that may be selling insurance or doing something else. So they've cut some of the numbers down. So I think the voting's slightly better. I don't think it was last year, but so I'll play the other side and go, heck yeah. I think Joe Milton, if you want to drop 100 on that to win 2,000, is not a horrible bet because people will be watching Tennessee's offense. They weren't watching Tennessee's offense in May of 2022 and then into September of 2022, but they'll be watching. So he doesn't have the preseason Heisman hype as a player, but Tennessee does as a team. So I'll go, heck yeah, I'll drop 100 on that.
But Dave, they're going to hold him back a little. People who are going to watch now are going to be a little disappointed because we've talked about they're going to change their offensive philosophy a little bit this year. They're going to focus a little bit more on moving the ball because one of Dylan Sampson, but 2, Joe Milton's better at throwing over the middle and less on the deep shots, which Hendon Hooker, like you take those deep shots as much as possible with Hooker because of his arm and how accurate he was. Joe Milton has a bigger arm, but isn't as good on the deep ball.
Well, but now wait a second, brother. I think they're gonna change their philosophy a little bit, but I think it's like going from an Audi to a BMW. I mean, they're not going to go from an Audi to a Chrysler.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I'm just saying. I think you're going to see some more long drives. I think people are going to want to see what they saw with Hooker last year, and they're not going to see that. You're not going to see 5 touchdown passes against Alabama. I don't think you're going to see that.
Okay, well, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. Heck yeah. I would take this. All right. So, and then the last one I made up myself, and this is not according to DraftKings or anybody else. Tennessee to finish at the end of the season, end of the regular season, because I don't really count bowl games until we get in the playoff. And then I've thought about this. I'm going to adjust the way I judge teams completely. But Tennessee to finish 6th or better. So I've got 6.5 in the rankings, in the CFP rankings at the end of the year. That's 4th down. Do you take the Vols to finish higher or lower? And I'm going to give myself some credit. I think I kind of nailed a pretty good number there.
Okay. You did 6.5.
Did you like it? 6.5?
I like it.
Thank you. You're the gambling guy. I didn't know if it was any good or not, to be honest with you.
I'm going to go lower. And here's why. There's going to be 2
As
SEC
in lower,
teams.
you mean 7th or
worse. There's going to be 2 SEC teams finish higher than them, I think. I think they'll be the third best. They'll have the third best finish in the SEC. There's going to be an ACC team by default because they played in the ACC finish higher than them. And there's going to be 2 Big Ten teams finish higher than them. And probably 1 Big 12 team, again, by default because they play in the Big 12. It's going to finish
So are
higher.
you getting into a little bit of the politics of it by 2 other SEC teams, or are you just stacking teams?
I'm stacking teams. Like, okay, so I think that, again, even though they're playing at home, I think they're losing to Georgia this year. I do. I think Tennessee's still going to lose to Georgia at home this year. Georgia's going to finish higher than them. Y'all are going to just call me Caleb, Brian, Kelly, but LSU's going to finish higher than them too because I'm so high on LSU. So Tennessee doesn't play LSU this year, but I think LSU and Georgia both finish higher than Tennessee. They will finish higher than Alabama, though. Heard it here first.
Okay. Well, then, okay, so you're going to say take the no way. I'm going to say, heck yeah, I think they'll finish 6th or higher. And I think it'll be 6th, which is why I put the number at 6.5. So, again, you've got the – and this is not the Georgia – I just want to clarify to everybody. This is not the Georgia team that went into 2022 that I knew from my sources had incredible talent. They lacked some motivation throughout the season, but that they weren't going to take a step down in talent from their first national championship team. I knew that. This Georgia team is not that. They're not just reloading. Okay. So I think Tennessee could potentially upset Georgia, but as it pertains to this query, I don't know that Georgia is going to finish as high as they have recently. So I don't know that Tennessee will need to beat Georgia to finish 6th or better. And they have respect going in that they didn't have before. So I'll say, heck yeah.
Do you think they have a better shot at Alabama or at home against Georgia this year?
Alabama.
Even on the road, I agree. Alabama on the road, they have a better shot at Alabama.
But I always use this terminology. If they played 10 times, how many times would they win? I think based off what I'm hearing from Alabama and Alabama fans, you're going to call me crazy and this crazy Tennessee fan, which I'm not. I'm objective. But I think they have a 50-50 shot to beat Alabama on the road. I think that they have a 30% chance of beating Georgia at home. Is that fair?
I'm totally with you on that. I'm totally with you. And by the way, we're objective in the sense of I think on a neutral field, 10 times Tennessee beats Alabama 6 times this year. Honestly, on a neutral field. Last year in Neyland Stadium, I think Alabama would have won 6 times, and that was one of those 4 times Tennessee did it when they beat Alabama. I think Alabama was the better team last year. But
I think Tennessee pushed Alabama around up front. I thought at halftime that Tennessee could be up 2 touchdowns.
Oh, they did push Alabama around up front, but Alabama had the best quarterback in college football last year, and quarterbacks can be the great neutralizer. And as good as Hendon Hooker was, let me be clear, Bryce Young was better in that game. I mean, he was.
He was the best player on the field, and Will Anderson decided he wanted to be on the side of a milk carton. For those that don't know, that's where they used to put lost kids. All right, Zulbeer.com, XULbeer.com. Some of the things I use are dated. Maybe they should start doing that on the side of beer cans or our Tennessee Cider Company.
That's got to be your go-to. Like whenever someone doesn't show up in the NBA playoffs, Stephen A says there's an APB out for him. Now you can just be like, he's on the side of a milk carton.
Do you remember getting those milk cartons as a kid? And you'd be at lunch at school and you'd be like, oh man, poor Johnny Bob. I wonder if anybody's found him yet. Yeah, I'll take another pizza. Good luck, Johnny Bob. That's terrible. All right, Zulbeer, XULbeer.com. Worldwide award-winning craft beer. Man, it is awesome. Worldwide award-winning craft beer and Zulbeer.com. It is fantastic. And if you're in Knoxville, they have parking downtown. They're absolutely unbelievable. And to have parking downtown is one thing, but another panoramic view, they've got that as well. It's something else. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that. Zulbeer, XULbeer.com. So we got torn up because we said Alabama was desperate. Every Crimson Tide fan that has ever donned a crimson jersey, that has ever even thought about dating their sister or cousin, came out of the woodwork. No, I'm kidding. There's that. I mean, all the Southern jokes are all the same for all schools. So, I love Alabama fans. I love what Nick Saban has done because it's a guy you either root for or against. So I'm kidding, Alabama fans. I love you, and I hope you subscribe to this channel and you're a part of it. I think it's cool that we've gotten way more SEC, Caleb, than we ever dreamed we would. We thought we'd be all Tennessee, so it's been really cool. So we got ripped by Bama fans, all right, last week, and we said, hey, you bring in this Notre Dame quarterback, Tyler Buckner. And is this a desperation move? Because a spring quarterback, bringing one of those guys in after spring practice is a guy that probably didn't win the job. And Sam, what's his name? Hartman. Sam Hartman won the job when he came over from Wake. He won the job at Notre Dame. They didn't announce it, but sources tell me that he won the job, and that's the reason why Tyler Buckner won it out. We argued that it was desperate. I didn't think it was. I thought they brought another guy in who had injury issues but could play. So now we have A&M bringing in a quarterback. So I want to tell you a little bit about the newest quarterback, and this is very important because I think the Aggies fall on Tennessee's schedule. I think a lot of people think that the Aggies could just fall apart this year. So they bring in Jalen Henderson. He announces his commitment to Texas A&M on Sunday. Today's tough question is brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Who's more desperate? Today's tough question. Bam, here we go.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So they both bring in spring quarterbacks, which if you bring in a guy in the January portal, that ain't desperate. That's making your roster better. If you bring a guy in now, the backdrop is desperation. It may not really be desperate. I didn't think Alabama's was desperate. Let's talk about whether or not this is desperate. Who's more desperate in bringing in a spring quarterback? Is it Texas A&M or is it Alabama? What say you, Caleb Calhoun? I'll start, and then I'll tell you why you're right or wrong. How about that?
Okay. I think we're going to agree. And I don't think this is close. And I am one who said Alabama is desperate. Texas A&M.
And I said no. And I said,
said no.
Because I think he's a pretty good player. Go ahead.
But Texas A&M is way more desperate, and this is a way more desperate move. Tyler Buckner transferred after not winning the starting job at Notre Dame and losing it to Sam Hartman. It was Sam Hartman, right? The elite transfer who we felt could start in the SEC.
He was the number one, in my opinion, and the people I talked to, he was the number one quarterback in the transfer portal, in the first transfer portal, in the winter transfer portal. And I thought Tennessee should go after him, quite frankly. But they had seen enough from Nico that they felt good about him. So they didn't even really pursue Sam. So where are we now with A&M? Is this desperate?
So, and yes, it's more desperate with A&M. Jalen Henderson transferred on April 20th, 2023 from Fresno State, meaning he lost a starting job at Fresno State and he's going to Texas A&M.
And let me add this. Or he wanted to play in the SEC and A&M gave him an opportunity. I mean, but you would think that would happen in the winter portal.
That would happen in the winter. And also, if you wanted to play, Dave, you're a 5-star quarterback right now. If you have your choice, though, you may want to play in the SEC. Do you really want to play for Texas A&M when you know Jimbo Fisher might get fired this year? Or would you feel a little safer playing at Fresno State where you can maybe still build your profile a little bit as a quarterback? I understand at Fresno State at that point.
I mean, you're they both sound horrible to me. I mean, I don't want to play football in California. There are parts about Cali I love, but it ain't the football part.
Yeah, but you can, as a quarterback, if you're trying to get to the NFL or whatever, you can become a highly talented draft pick wherever you play. I mean, we see that quarterbacks come from all over in football. It's like usually where the difference is, it's the offensive line, receiver, defensive line, things like that. What I'm saying this past year was a bit of an anomaly with so many SEC quarterbacks taken. But what I am saying is that he was desperate. He wanted to play somewhere. Texas A&M was desperate. They needed a starter. They just threw it out. They just threw it with their hands. They're like, all right, we'll take him. Let's see if this works. This is beyond desperate by Texas A&M.
I am not. I'm not backtracking, but I actually think the Alabama one's more desperate. I think this is a guy for depth, but they've got the Connor Wigman kid, and I think that he's going to be the starter. I think Jimbo Fisher. I think this is a little gamesmanship. He didn't say that he's going to be the starter, but I think he'll be the starter. This kid that they brought in is a 3-star guy. I don't think this is desperate. I think this is depth. I actually think the Alabama one, I'm not backtracking, but I think the Alabama one is more desperate than this.
You are all over the place, Dave.
No, I'm not, man. I guess I just don't think that. I think this is for depth. I think this is bringing in a dude that he's at Fresno State, and maybe he had an aunt that lived next to Texas A&M, and he saw that he could get food there, and the facilities were way better. And he's like, I'd rather be a backup at A&M, which there's no shame in that, than a starter at Fresno State.
I don't think that at all. And I don't think he would. I don't think you would rather be a backup at A&M than a starter at Fresno State. Look, again, quarterback is not other positions. If you're a quarterback, you want to be able to start because you can actually build your profile. Carson Wentz was a number 1 draft pick out of North Dakota State. Again, quarterback is the one position where it doesn't really matter where you play when you're trying to build your profile. It doesn't matter what conference you play in. It doesn't matter what team you play for. I think we've noticed that.
Travis says, I'm old waffle Dave. You watch it, Travis. I'll walk down to the shipping department and have your shirt canceled. It hadn't gone out yet, but it's going out today. So I'm kidding. The Alabama one to me feels desperate because I know Jalen Milroe can't play. Okay. I mean, and
I know Texas A&M as a team can't play.
Right.
I know the whole team can't play.
Oh, maybe it's desperate by the kid who transferred. I don't think it's as desperate by A&M. I think they want to add depth. This is a 3-star guy, unless he's there just are not a lot of misevaluations of quarterbacks. Have you noticed that? Usually the quarterbacks from high school to college are at least starters that are 4 or 5 stars. I mean, for the most part. I know you've had a situation with Brian Moore, and then the most recent
he was
kid.
a 3-star, though,
What's that?
He was a 3-star, though. So, yeah, that was.
Okay, he's a 3-star. I mean, you've had situations where guys have gotten shuffled through recently at Tennessee, but I think that's because of an offensive change. So I don't think either is incredibly desperate. I think the Alabama one is more desperate. Go ahead and click that like button, subscribe. But first, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Let me tell you something else about the Alabama situation that I heard over the weekend. But first, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. If you want to save thousands or tens of $1,000s, go to AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Over 40 years in his office of experience in buying and selling houses in the Knoxville area. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. He is great. So go ahead and reach out to him if you have any real estate needs. I'm about to do that very thing here in the next, maybe this week. So AndyMasonRealEstate.com. So some things I heard about Alabama. I do not believe that bringing in Tyler Buckner was a depth move. Now, I haven't heard from my sources in A&M yet. When I do, I'll let you know. And I may change my mind tomorrow, to be real honest with you. But I think that the Buckner thing was, hey, can you come here and play? Let's give this a shot. I think Ty Simpson would have played in front of Jalen Milroe, and Bryce Young got hurt last year. If Simpson was ready, he obviously wasn't. There's concern there about long-term future. And then Jalen Milroe managed to turn the ball over 5 times in one game. That's tough to do. So that's what I heard over the weekend. I think it fortifies your point, but I just like to share what I heard, Caleb. If Ty Simpson didn't make a push, if Ty Simpson wasn't the guy that they threw in there last year, then when Jalen Milroe is turning the ball over approximately every 8 minutes, then that tells me that Ty Simpson's not even close to ready. And you bring in another quarterback. I mean, I kind of thought in the back of my head, nothing I heard, but thought in the back of my head, Ty Simpson's going to come out and win the job in the spring. And because we know Jalen Milroe can't protect the ball. He hasn't. From not only publicly, but people that I talk to, okay? that to me means that was your next 5-star great guy, right? It was supposed to be Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, and then it was Bryce Young, and your next guy is? It was supposed to be Ty Simpson. It's not Ty Simpson. So I'll give you credit. Last week, you called it desperate. I'll give you a little bit of desperate on that. How about that?
Okay, I appreciate that. I also find it funny that it seems like Tennessee has a lot more success with quarterbacks from Alabama than Alabama does with quarterbacks from Tennessee.
That is weird.
Yeah. Condrich Holloway and T. Martin, both from Alabama. 2 legendary quarterbacks at Tennessee. Alabama goes and gets Ty Simpson. And it was a big blow to Tennessee fans, by the way. People forget this. Heupel was in his first year. Taven Jackson not committed to Tennessee, but they were still desperation because we didn't know how good or bad the program was going to be. It hurt Tennessee fans hard when Ty Simpson committed to Alabama. I don't think they're feeling that bad anymore.
No, they're cool. They can roll with that.
Yep.
That's good. I mean, so if you get Ty Simpson, it changes. It's so funny how these things can change the trajectory of an entire program, and really they can change the future history of what happens. If they get Ty Simpson, do they get Nico? I don't think so.
Oh, I don't think so either. And there's rumors, Tennessee played UT Martin last year. Ty Simpson's father is UT Martin's head coach. And let's just say there's not a lot of love lost between Jason Simpson and the University of Tennessee.
Interesting. Okay, did not know that. Is that the Lane Kiffin gift that keeps on giving? Because he didn't connect with in-state coaches, and there's still some in-state coaches that are, that's the thing we haven't ever talked about Lane Kiffin. There's still some in-state coaches that are mad that they lost touch with Tennessee, and then you follow that up with Dooley, who didn't go to any high school football games during his tenure, literally did not go to one single one, and then you have Butch Jones, who tried, I guess, and then you have Jeremy Pruitt, who is a defensive coach. So I wonder if that's one, because Fulmer had that reputation as well, that he didn't recruit as much in state, but it really wasn't fair to Fulmer. Fulmer got the best player. Lane Kiffin did not recruit in state well enough. He didn't make the long-term relationships. He didn't think the in-state talent was going to be good enough long-term. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. I do wear sunglasses now, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube, because I've got raccoon eyes and a sunburn. But I don't wear contacts, and I don't wear regular glasses because they fix me. I can see long. I can see far. I can see wherever I want to. Almost X-ray vision. And they're local. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. They did the LASIK surgery with me. They can do the cataracts if you've got someone in your family that's getting close to that point. And when your vision starts to get a little worse around 50, those are most oftentimes cataracts. Maybe not severe cataracts, but a lot of times those can be taken care of. Okay, you may not know that, but that blurry vision, the close vision, you don't need a readers if you get LASIK. So keep that in mind. They're local doctors, and they've got their vision centers that can take care of your annual checkup. They're just simply awesome. That is the facts. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. We're going to be back in 2 minutes, and Caleb is trying to blow up the ACC. Does that mean the SEC could add a team or two? I ain't ruling anything out. Did anybody think that Texas and Oklahoma was about to be in the SEC? 2 minutes. He's Caleb. I'm Dave, off the Hook Sports.
I know you like the heat. You got to try my signature sauce 87.
Dude, I love you and I love to try your wing sauce, but when it comes to wings, I need them really hot. I hit 105 on the radar gun. I need to be pretty spicy.
Yeah, I know that, man. Look, if sauce 87 isn't enough for you, I guess you can try the Holy Moses or the Grim Reaper.
Now we're talking.
Take it from these Farragut Admirals. When you're craving wings, it's got to be Craven Wings. Visit them online at cravenwings.com.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your bear.
Before Cadis, I was really heavy into the drug culture. I was selling drugs. I was just constantly in pain. I was missing like a good support system in my life. Cadis has given me everything that I need in order to successfully have a wonderful recovery, in order to have a life that I didn't even know was possible before. And it's not just about me anymore, and I love that. I absolutely love it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry, I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Caleb has an interesting theory on what the H today that we're going to get to. It looks like there may be a way for some ACC teams to get out of their contract, which is insanely long and insanely punitive to get out of it for like another 8 years. You have to pay like $250 million or something silly. I'll look up the numbers. Caleb, if you can do that, I'd appreciate it. But it's just bizarro. So that's why the ACC teams have not been have not been poached, because to get out of their ACC contract, it is incredibly different. But first, we want to talk some hoops. So hang tight for that, because I would love to see Florida State Clemson enter the SEC. Love it. There's part of me that would like to see Georgia Tech because of the history there. They were in the SEC. Tennessee and Georgia Tech had a great rivalry. Tech in the middle of Atlanta. I think it would help Tennessee. We'll get to all that. But first, we got hoops. BJ Edwards, Lady Vols, all of that. And a lot happened over the weekend as Tennessee hoops is rolling forward. And I want to start with this before we get specifically to what BJ Edwards entering the transfer portal means. With the guys that have come and gone, do you believe there is any sort of philosophical change whatsoever? Because I know where you're going to go. You're going to say no immediately. But whatsoever to add some shooters to open up this offense a little teensy tiny bit. Recap what they brought in and kind of give me your thought.
I don't believe there's a philosophical change. I believe he has brought in talent to be able to run an inside-out game that I think should be run where he has enough shooters. It's the way Rick Barnes is going to utilize the rotation. So I'll tell you this right now, he's not going to utilize rotation the way he should. He's going to still play big. He's going to still go for the real big guy that's more of a post guy to play at the small forward position and just crowd the paint, and it's going to be problematic. I do believe that. And so they do have enough. I don't think the BJ Edwards transfer is a big deal because they do have enough firepower at the guard spots now. I just don't think Rick Barnes is going to utilize the firepower the way he should.
Yeah. You could be right, but I believe this, and I was rewatching some games over the weekend, some Tennessee basketball games. I think you've sold Rick Barnes short on one thing, Caleb, and I think that is Uros Plastic just didn't do a good job of getting the ball out at times. Now, I believe that when they would dump it in and the inside out game is he needs to find somebody that can shoot from the perimeter, correct? And a lot of those guys, everybody would drop back and they wouldn't double down on Euros, and then they would play the perimeter shooters. So he had trouble finding people. When I went back and watched, I think some of that's on him. I think we gave him too much of a pass. I think some of that's on him.
I've been critical of Plavsic from the start, but I would say that's still on Barnes because he would play him more than Adu, and I think Adu is significantly better than Plavsic. I don't really think it's close either.
Wow. Okay.
And I mean, I can't believe that Uros Plavsic is testing the NBA draft waters. I don't know what him. There's no way he makes it in the NBA.
No, unless he grows about 3 inches and adds 35 pounds. And then
even that, like he brings the ball down every time from the board. Like the most important thing for bigs in the NBA now is to do what you said, find the open guy from underneath the basket. And if they're going to go up, they can't bring the ball down. Like, okay, yeah, Draymond. Sorry.
I got taught that in middle school.
Yeah, exactly. Draymond Green is 6'8". He would, if he can play under the basket, Uros Plavsic is 7'1". Every time Uros Plavsic gets a rebound, Draymond Green would strip him. It wouldn't even be close. Green wouldn't even have to try that hard.
Yeah, I don't know that Plastic, you bring up a great point, could get off a shot on a close rebound of the basket.
Yeah. Yeah, he has no shot. No pun intended.
Okay, so BJ Edwards is out. So you don't think there's any sort of major philosophical shift here. You just think that Rick Barnes is trying to get better at what Rick Barnes does.
Yes. And for those concerned about BJ Edwards, we all thought he was going to be the next Zakai Ziegler and back him up. Zakai got hurt last year, and they still didn't play BJ Edwards. I don't think that's a philosophy thing. I don't think he was cutting it the way Barnes wanted him to. And guys, I got to be honest, I'm hearing some rumblings that Freddie DeLeon, who was a mid-year commitment and a 4-star, is a potential superstar combo guard. Like we're talking a 6'5" guy who can play the point and can shoot from the outside. So it's almost like a combination of Vescovi and Zakai Ziegler with another inch. That's what I'm hearing about Freddie DeLeon.
Interesting. That's what they need. They need a guy who can create his own shot when all is going to heck in a handbasket.
Exactly. And
we're past the days where that's Kevin McHale with his back to the basket.
Yes. And Kevin McHale also had Harris was drawing attention away.
It's not a post guy anymore. It has to be a 2-guard.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm saying if it is a post guy, again, you can have back to the basket guys, but Tim Duncan was great with his back to the basket too. But you had Manu and Tony Parker and a bunch of shooters all around at the time. Kevin McHale, they had to worry about Parrish. Bird could stretch the floor. And so Danny.
Yeah, but the philosophy of the game overall, which is what I was alluding to, I don't think anybody dumps it down in the post when they need a sure 2 anymore. The sure 2 has to come from the outside in as opposed to the inside out. That's the way basketball is. So you're thinking a Freddie DeLeon could be that guy. That would be monstrous for Tennessee. So while we're touching on basketball, the Lady Vols with some shifting. Are the Lady Vols better today than they were last week when I was at my son's graduation? By the way, Caleb, thanks for filling in. And did I cry? Yes, I did.
Aww.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I think they are. They added Jewel Spear, a Wake Forest transfer. For those who don't know, 2 years ago, Jewel Spear led the whole ACC in scoring, and last year she was in the top 5 in the ACC in scoring. This is a big help because she's shooting roughly between 35 and 40% from 3 right now, which in the women's game is really good. You know, the women's game good is in the 30% range. So 35 to 40% is actually really, really, really good. And she's another guard. I think that Jordan Horston was a player you turn to create something for yourself, but she didn't fit Kelly Harper's system that well because Kelly Harper likes to use bigs, and then she wants her guards to be able to shoot well from outside to stretch the floor. Jordan Horston didn't stretch the floor too well. She was a slasher. Jordan Horston would have worked in John Calipari's offense if someone ran that in women's college basketball in a dribble drive. She's not working in with Kelly Harper. So her being gone, a guy like Joel Spear coming, I do think the Lady Vols should be significantly better this year.
I used to say, pardon me, in the women's game, that winning a championship was equivalent to making the Final Four in the men's game because there were more teams and more competitive. Does that statement make sense 10 years ago?
I would have said it was equivalent to making the Sweet 16 in the men's game 10, 15 years ago, but I see your point.
Yeah, okay. So good. We're with that. So let me throw this out at you, and you tell me if it's a bad comparison. Let's reset it before you answer. But I'm going to ask you this: what's a fair comparison? The women's game, a team making the Final Four, which is deeper than it has been, but not incredibly deep at all, or a men's team making the Sweet 16 or Elite 8?
Women Final Four, men's Sweet 16 or Elite 8.
I'm taking championship out of the mix because it is now competitive in the women's game.
Yeah.
You can't just show up with a bunch of meeks and win a championship in November, basically. I mean, we all knew they were going to win it.
That was the most, that was. I look back, I was young, but I remember the writings behind those teams. It's like everybody knew that team was going to be the greatest team of all time the minute they showed up on campus.
Yeah, and you get a Candace Parker or a Taurasi, and it's like that person is a different evolution in the women's game. They're going to win it all. Okay, so what's the equivalent? I guess I need your help in phrasing this question because
I think Sweet 16 in men's is a good equivalent of the Final Four in women's. I think that's a good equivalent.
Okay, so you have to bet right now. Kelly Harper over the next 3 years, let's assume they all keep their jobs and Rick Barnes doesn't retire. Over the next 3 years, Kelly Harper makes more or less Final Fours than Rick Barnes does Sweet 16s.
Now, here's the trick.
That's hot high heat right there.
That's a good one. Rick Barnes has made 2 Sweet 16s in the last 5 seasons. 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. Kelly Harper has never made a Final Four. So based on that, I would have to say Rick Barnes. But I will say this, because I'm hedging a little, I'm not very comfortable with that bet. Because Rick Barnes has made 2 Sweet 16s in the last 5 seasons. Up until 2019, he hadn't made it out of the second weekend since 2008, or the first weekend since 2008. So we had a long drought. And he's still, every single year at Tennessee, he's been eliminated from the tournament. He's lost to a lower seed. So that's a really, really big indictment. But I still think Rick Barnes has a better chance of making a Sweet 16 than Kelly Harper does a Final Four over the next 3 years.
Well, I wasn't just talking about one. For goodness gracious. I mean,
I think we might have to talk about one.
With the support, if they don't make one in the next 3 years, I'm changing coaches on both sides. I don't care if Rick Barnes retires or not.
Rick Barnes just went 3 years without making a Sweet 16.
I know. That would be 6.
But he made it this past year is what I'm saying. So
right.
He goes 3
6 out of 7. That's not cool.
No, yeah, that's true. You're right. So I'm just saying, I don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out, but yeah.
Okay, so who makes the most Final Fours, or who does the best? Kelly Harper in Final Fours or Rick Barnes in Sweet 16s?
Kelly Harper in Final Fours at that point, because once Rick Barnes gets to the Sweet 16, I got him losing every time.
But he would make it. So
he would make it. Yeah.
Wow. I'd go Rick Barnes Sweet 16. What did you go with?
Okay, once they get there, I would say Kelly Harper would do better in a Final Four than Rick Barnes would do in a Sweet 16. Only because Kelly Harper hasn't lost any Final Four games. She just hasn't won any. Rick Barnes just keeps losing when he gets to the Sweet 16 to lower seed teams that he's better than.
Mr. Jones asked, does Candace Parker have any daughters?
I think she does.
I don't know if she's married. Why don't you Google that real quick while I play the element?
As a matter of fact, I think she has a kid with Sheldon Williams. That should be a great basketball player.
Yes, and good gravy. Let's hope it looks more like her than him.
What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
I was told this story that Mike Krzyzewski, when Sheldon Williams showed up on campus and they're recruiting him, one of the associate ADs pulled him aside and said, he is from Earth, right? Or is he from Mars? I'm kidding. But he does. His eyes are so far apart. Does he not look like a Martian? Sheldon Williams?
Yes. Well, we found
So
out
weird.
Candace Parker is remarried. She has a wife now.
Right.
Does seem like she was into women, so maybe she just couldn't tell attractive men from unattractive men.
He is an unattractive man. I can tell you the ones and the tens. I can tell you the Brad Pitts, and I can tell you the Sheldon Williams. He was a Sheldon Williams. And they can't even do like plastic surgery to move your eyeballs closer together. What the H brought to you by Vassy Lawn and Garden. Man alive, it's worth the drive. Buying power that'll save you money, whether you're coming from Nashville, Knoxville, or Chattanooga there in Cleveland, Tennessee, Toro. Count on it. Man alive, it's worth the drive. So, Caleb, lay it on me, brother. You have an interesting theory as to how Clemson and Florida State are trying to break up the ACC. And let's get to that because what they have to pay about $50 million to get out right now, according to our
that. It's worse.
Okay, it's worse. All right, so because I would love for Florida State and Clemson to be coming into the SEC in the next 5 years, I would prefer Clemson and Florida State come in over Texas and Oklahoma, to be real honest with you. Because I am for you, the fans that are on this board, and I know that you want to go to every away venue and getting to A&M, getting to Oklahoma is probably a plane flight or a long drive. It's tougher to do. Florida State ain't close, don't get me wrong. But I would have preferred that from a fan standpoint. I always side with the fans. And who the hell wants to go to Missouri? Excuse my language. I mean, nobody. I mean, has anybody said, "Ooh, let's go to Missouri for a weekend"? I mean, we took a roller coaster trip through Ohio and went to Kings Island, Cedar Point. We took a vacation in Ohio, but I would not take a vacation in Missouri if it was fully paid. I've been to St. Louis one time, and I did win at a casino, which has only happened like 3 times in my life, playing cards. So, but all right, so. What's your theory as to Clemson and Florida State are trying to break up the ACC?
So it's not just Clemson and Florida State. It's Miami and North Carolina, too. It's those 4 schools. So, Dave, let's start with this. You and I know
a lot.
We know that those 4 schools want in the SEC. If they could get into the SEC tomorrow, they would do it.
Yep. And I do know this from a very well-placed source. The SEC out of that group you mentioned would want North Carolina first and foremost.
Oh, I agree. And we also know they want North Carolina the most, and we know that they would probably willingly take all 4 because all 4 would bring in a great bit of revenue for them. Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So that part's out the way. So roughly about 2 months ago, those 4 schools came to the ACC and said, "Hey, we're tired of this equal revenue sharing," which was a deal they signed in 2016 with the Media Rights Network, ESPN. That's going to last through 2036. They said, we're tired of the revenue sharing. We're bringing in all the money. Wake and Duke and Pittsburgh and Syracuse are mooching off of us. It's time we get a bigger piece of the pie. Just for context, guys, in case you want to know, now this isn't all the revenue, but specifically television contract revenue. The ACC is bringing in $17 million. For context, the SEC is bringing in $51 million. I mean, this is a big gulf. On top of that, the Florida State athletic director recently said it's not possible for Florida State and Florida to coexist on the same sphere with this difference in revenue coming. Basically admitting we have no shot to compete with Florida if the revenue doesn't change a little bit.
Okay.
The ACC, as you know, Dave, is going to say, well, screw you. You signed this deal. We don't care. And they can say that. Now because here's the thing, you need a majority of athletic directors in schools to agree to a different revenue sharing. You think Wake Forest is going to get on board to give Florida State a bigger piece of the pie? They love that welfare check they're getting from Florida State. And so does Duke, and so does Pittsburgh. So the next move would be for Florida State. And I think we're in this, Josh Pate said this about 2 months ago, and I agree. We're in this part of the negotiations right now. Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and UNC are basically like, all right, we're ready to leave. And the ACC is like, you can't leave. And Florida and those 4 schools are like, watch us. Now, here's the sticking point. The exit fees per school it's not like an outright exit fee. There's a bunch of different types of fees, and it's estimated at about $120 million per school.
Mr. Jones posted on our message board, and his stuff's good. 52 million. So were we sure?
That's what Maryland paid when they left in 2012. There was a new deal signed in 2016.
Okay. I did think it was in the hundreds of millions.
Yeah, it's in the hundreds. For context, Oklahoma and Texas, it was combined $100 million for them to leave the Big 12, and they were able to get out of their grant of rights deal on top of that and pay the $100 million. Now, this is a sticking point. It's not just the money, the exit fee to leave the ACC. The grant of rights, for those who don't know, if Florida State were to, ACC has grant of media rights over all schools until 2036, which is to say if Florida State left the ACC and joined the SEC, the ACC could legitimately blackball them from being on national TV. They would have the right to determine when Florida State plays on TV and what contracts they can deal with. So that you got to get out of that if you're going to leave the conference. Well, I'm going to cite what another podcast I listened to this weekend. It's called FSU Football Double Fries No Slaw. And they brought a guy named David Hood of Clemson Tiger Net to join them. And what they were saying was that apparently those 4 schools have now gone to 2 other schools and gotten them on board. The rumors are there's 2 other schools that also on board on trying to take a bigger piece of the pie. Now, Dave, I don't know who you think it is. My guess is Virginia Tech and NC State. Those would be number 5 and number 6, right? In terms of football schools generating revenue.
I mean, Tech for sure. I don't know about NC State, but I know they've tried. They upped Dave Doran's contract to keep him when he got some other offers. So I guess I don't feel as strongly about NC State as you do, but you could well be right.
Maybe it's Virginia Tech and Virginia. Maybe it's Virginia Tech and Louisville even.
I'd probably go if I had to pick. I don't know. I'll tell you what I know, what I think, and what I don't know. I don't know, but I would guess Louisville. Go ahead.
Okay, so we know for sure it's Virginia Tech, and it might be Louisville the other one. So here's what I'm thinking is happening. They're trying to get enough schools to be willing to leave the ACC at once, because here's what's going to happen if they all leave the ACC. ESPN can pull out of its contract immediately, because why the heck would you have a contract with the ACC that doesn't have Florida State, Miami, Clemson, UNC, Virginia Tech? I mean,
that's practically defaulting on the contract that you offered.
Exactly. No other TV deal, no other contract. Nobody's going to offer the ACC another contract. At that point, the ACC would become defunct, just no longer exist as a conference, at which point there is no grant of rights and there is no exit fee. So I think these schools are now working behind the scenes to make sure that not only will they leave the ACC, but when they leave, they torpedo the whole conference along with it so they don't have to pay anything.
Okay, so we're at a point where we think it's going to be the Big Ten and the SEC. They're going to be kind of like the AL, NL, and Major League Baseball eventually within the next 3 to 5 years. Okay, so if that's the case and you're the SEC, do you want to expand or do you want to hold tight to see what happens with that? Because you are divvying up the pie more and more. If you bring somebody in, so they better bring more money to the table. I mean, you're not running a shelter here. You're not giving free meals out. So who would you bring in that you think would help the conference? Or if you're the SEC, would you bring nobody in if you're Greg Sankey? If all this stuff happens and the ACC blows up, let me ask you, Caleb, who would you bring in? Or would you bring in anybody at all? And I'll tell you who I'd bring in.
Okay, so there's no question you bring in North Carolina. That's an obvious one. That's a new TV market.
And I can tell you from a well-placed source that would happen like the next day.
Yeah, because North Carolina brings in a lot of revenue. It's actually mind-boggling to me that they haven't had a powerhouse football program, because they have all the resources to be the Tennessee of the ACC if they wanted to. They just never have been. So you bring in North Carolina and you get in a new TV market. I think Florida State and Clemson have enough of a brand that even though they're in a similar market, they bring so much new. It's like, yes, Notre Dame's in the same market as Indiana and Purdue, but you're still bringing in Notre Dame if you're the Big Ten because of how gigantic of a revenue pie they bring in. So I think Florida State and Clemson outweigh the splitting of the revenue. I think the fourth one you bring in, so I said UNC, Florida State, Clemson, and this is where Miami needs to be careful. I think the fourth one you bring in is Virginia Tech because, again, power football program and get you into the Virginia market at the same time. I think what Miami might be looking for is to get into the Big Ten, because the Big Ten is looking at trying to get into the Florida markets. So you could see them go for Miami, Georgia Tech, maybe try to get in the Atlanta market. So, but I think those are the four schools: Virginia Tech, UNC, Florida State, and Clemson. I think you bring those four in.
Okay, now I'm going to come strictly. This is not from a business standpoint. I think I have a decent business mind, but so I'm going to go ahead and set that aside. This is from a what I know about the schools, and I've been to I think every school we've mentioned. So I've been to the campuses. I know what they're like. I know if they would be good fits, and this is just for what Dave wants to watch on Saturdays in the SEC. I'm just going to be real honest with you. So this is not from a business perspective. I would take North Carolina, okay, because that is a little businessy, because I see the aspect of having another school in there with high academic standards. I know what they went through, but high academic standards, and you would bring in a basketball team, okay, which would make them better.
Oh, Kentucky, UNC every year. Oh,
it's tight. It's tight. I could make an argument for North Carolina, Duke as the two teams you bring in, because you would dominate that state. And then suddenly you're the basketball conference. But I'm not going to go in that direction right now. I'm thinking more football. So while I know North Carolina is the one, that's the easy one. It's not Miami, because they don't invest. Their poor students have to drive 45 minutes to go to the Hard Rock Stadium, which is the worst at blame casino you can ever go to. I'm just telling you, don't go to the Hard Rock Casino in Miami. Not even free drinks and no craps tables. But so they don't take it seriously. You have to drive 45 minutes to go to a home game, which is stupid. Can you imagine telling people that you had to go to the Tri-Cities to watch a Tennessee football game? So I'm not taking Miami. I'm taking Florida State, because I thought they were going to fall off the map about 5 years ago, but they're going in the right direction, and that was a coaching thing. I'm taking Clemson, but South Carolina is going to fight it. By the way, Florida is going to fight Florida State. I don't know that any of this is possible, but here's the four teams that Dave would take.
If you can take Texas against Texas A&M's wishes, you can take Florida State and Clemson against South Carolina and Florida's wishes.
Yeah, Florida had a lot of power when they had their former AD suddenly escaped.
Foley.
Yeah, they had a lot of power. They don't have that now. He retired. So I would take Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and this one might surprise you. West Virginia would not be far behind. If you've ever been to a game in West Virginia, it feels like you're at an SEC school. I mean, you're like, wow. I mean, they're rabid. So I would consider that. The other school I would consider that makes no business sense is Georgia Tech, and that would be because you would get the Atlanta market, and I think that's a place people like to go.
That's like bringing in Tulane at this point.
I agree. They would have to show me commitment to football. Now, have we left even a team out of this conversation that you would bring in?
Those are the main four. We agree on the top four: UNC, Virginia Tech, Clemson, and Florida State. I think those are four no-brainers, and you get to 20 teams at that point. And so you have a 20.
I didn't think we'd agree, but I guess we did, didn't we?
Yeah, and also you can cleanly split the division. So I think if you do a 20-team league, I think you have to do 4 divisions at this point, like 5 teams to a division, have like a Final Four, make it epic, because
that's hot right there. That's awesome.
Yeah, rivalries. A few rivalries would go away, but think about this. Okay, the divisions. If you do what we're talking about, Arkansas, Missouri, Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. That's one division. LSU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Alabama, Auburn is another. Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Virginia Tech, UNC. And then Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida State, Clemson.
Okay, let me make one more change. I'd drop Missouri and add West Virginia. While we're just in kind of la land anyway.
Well, then just kick out Vanderbilt.
No, I'm okay with their I'm okay with their long-term history. They used to be a good football program. I'm okay with their basketball history, and the academics are significant, which is part of the reason.
Missouri is pretty good academically, though. I know you hate Missouri, but that is a good academic school.
They are. They probably wouldn't have taken me, but I knew I was going to Tennessee, so I didn't apply. So I love it. So the rebuilt SEC. There we go.
The question becomes, Dave, do you think they're going to pull this off? Do you think these 6 schools are going to be able to pull off tanking the ACC and torpedoing it? Because if they make the jump, they have to do it knowing that the ACC will be defunct right after that.
Right, because then they would have to pay the penalties.
Right, exactly. Then they have to pay the penalties and the grant of rights. The penalties is one thing. I bet the SEC would willingly pay the penalties to get North Carolina, quite honestly. The question becomes the grant of rights, because what if North Carolina is in the SEC, but they can't be on TV until 2036?
Somebody said absolutely no to Duke. I'll tell you why I like Duke. And before I get to that, City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years of integrity, cityheatandair.com. They're in Knoxville, and your HVAC unit, when it gets hot, might crash. Well, the good thing about the City Heating and Air Conditioning, they won't say, hey, let's come in and spend $500,000 to replace a unit. Maybe you just need a part or some Freon. The thing I like about Duke, and I think I could, if you and I sat down together for like an hour, I convince you on this, is you would become the basketball conference if you got Duke and North Carolina. You'd have Kentucky, and I'm sorry, the shell of the ACC, they would then split up to the Big East in different places. You would not only be the football conference, you'd be the basketball conference. So there's an argument to be made for Duke, who has shown under David Cutcliffe that they can win at football too. They can be respectable. So don't just completely discount me on the Duke thing. Be sure and hit that like button right now. I'd greatly appreciate it. That would be awesome. If you haven't subscribed yet, do so. Our Celebrate 98 series, looking back and visiting with former Tennessee football players of the 98 team, coaches, and all of that. The first one, Eric Westmoreland, will debut this evening. So that's super cool. So be sure you're subscribed. Be sure you're a part of it. And we're live each and every day, 10 a.m. He's Caleb Calhoun, 10 a.m. Eastern. Live 10 a.m., but you can check us out anytime. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. Off